We found all these colors of wild clay, and now I have to process them. Last week, I showed you the process of separating, drying out, and breaking up the wild clay. And now the next step is rehydrating. So I separated the clay into 4 different containers. It still blows my mind that these 4 different colored clays all came from the same location. And then I simply added enough water to submerge all of the clay underwater with a little bit extra to help with mixing. I then let the clay sit for maybe a couple hours to give the clay enough time to absorb the water. And then after the clay was hydrated, my plan was to use my mixer attachment on my drill to homogenize the batches. But then I realized I forgot my drill. Luckily, my grandpa had a drill in his basement. It was actually really old and vintage looking, so it was kind of cool. And I thought it was cool until I started using it and realized it had no speed gradient. It basically went either 0 or 100. I also found these like vintage sieves at my grandpa's, so I thought maybe I could run the clay through the sieve to homogenize the batch and break up any big lumps. But then I realized that would take a really long time and probably not necessary since the clay was pretty pure to begin with. So I went back to mixing with the vintage drill and eventually got it to where it needed to be. Then I pulled out my plaster slabs, dumped a layer of the clay on top of the plaster, let it dry out in the sun for a few hours while I did some chores around my grandpa's backyard, gave it a quick flip and let it sit a little bit longer, and then it was ready to wedge up. And look how gorgeous the clay came out. I honestly can't believe this just came from the ground. And then I repeated the same process for the other colored clays. So now I have all this wild clay to throw. Stay tuned for part 3 to see how it throws.